Hello and welcome. If you're new here, I'm Cassidy Cash, and this is Shakespeare's Weird Words. I am the host of That Shakespeare Life, the podcast that goes behind the curtain and into the real life and history of William Shakespeare. We have interview-based podcasts that go out every Monday where we talk about Shakespeare and his history and his life with the experts who know him best. Here on YouTube, we create a companion series to go along with our podcast to explore some of the words you encounter when you're looking through Shakespeare's plays, because some of the words that Shakespeare used, like the one we're going to talk about today, he completely made up, and others are so old that we simply don't use them today, and so the meanings get lost, and it can be hard to understand what he's talking about. So we're taking them one at a time here on YouTube to explore Shakespeare's weird words and exactly what they mean. This week, we're going to dive into the word arm-gaunt and look at what Shakespeare meant. Most dictionaries will tell you that this word is peculiar to Shakespeare with an unclear meaning. So to find out more about this weird word, let's take a look at the history. The only place that Shakespeare uses this word comes up in his play Antony and Cleopatra. It's from Act 1, Scene 5, where Alexis describes Antony by saying, "So he nodded and soberly did mount an arm-gaunt steed, who neighed so high that I would have spoke was beastly dumbed by him." So it's this impressive scene. But why does it being an arm-gaunt horse make it impressive? I follow him that he's describing a horse, but what exactly is an arm-gaunt horse? To begin my investigation, I start where any red-blooded American begins when they have a word they want to know more about. In Webster's dictionary, of course. According to Webster's revised unabridged dictionary from 1913, the word arm-gaunt is defined as both an adjective and a nonce word. I had to look up what Webster meant by calling it a nonce word, but that means that they think it's a word that was made up for the occasion. That means Mr. Webster believes that arm-gaunt is something Shakespeare made up and otherwise didn't exist, and it might not have caught on after Shakespeare introduced it to the English language either. So there may not be a good frame of reference outside of Shakespeare's plays for what it means. But he goes on to define it as of uncertain meaning, perhaps describing gaunt or slender limbs. That definition wasn't exactly satisfactory for me because I think you shouldn't define a word using the word. That's confusing. That's like saying, what's a car? It's a car. That's not helpful. So defining arm-gaunt as gaunt arms left me wanting more. So here's what some other historians had to say. One of the best sources for finding out anything about Shakespeare's words is at the website shakespeareswords.com. This website is run by my friends David and Ben Crystal. Hi, David. Hi, Ben. You can check out them on our podcast. They've been guests with us a couple of times, and I'll link to their episodes below this video. But they are both professional historians and experts at linguistics and pronunciation for the 16th and 17th century English. They've put together a library and an online glossary of all the words in Shakespeare's plays, along with definitions for how to say them and what they mean. It's really a great resource, especially for studying Shakespeare's plays, so I'll link you to their website below this video. Their definition, however, also suggests that the meaning is unclear, but they do add a bit to their definition to include, quote, in fine condition with gaunt limbs with armored trappings. That almost sounds like somebody who's really fit and muscular, maybe somebody who does Pilates regularly. They have defined arms. But when Shakespeare used the word, he's not talking about a person. He's talking about a horse. So does that definition make sense? I decided to keep looking. The Chambers declared this word to actually be an error, perhaps in spelling, since Elizabethan England hadn't established a standardized form of spelling. The English language didn't have rules about these words can only be spelled these ways. In fact, that's one reason when you look up Shakespeare, the written versions of his name will be different across a lot of different references because there was no standard way to spell Shakespeare. That came much later in history where words could only be spelled correctly one single way. So some editors have suggested Shakespeare might have meant arrogant instead of arm-gaunt and just misspelled it. The definition, or rather explanation to which I'm personally partial, however, is that Shakespeare could have been referring to a form of the word gauntlet. Now, a gauntlet was a medieval word that described an armored glove a knight would wear into battle. He could have been creating the word arm-gaunt to describe the armor the horse itself had on. According to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, horse armor did originate in the East in places like Egypt, where horse armor first got started. Additionally, by the time Shakespeare was writing the word armgaunt to describe Antony's horse, the design of armor for horses and men in battle was quite different for Shakespeare's life and his audience than it would have been for the Antony he was writing about in his play. So it's plausible to think Shakespeare might have been creating a word to describe the armor he wanted the audience to understand the horse as wearing. So he needed to create a word that described what it would look like in the minds of his audience that didn't have that style of armor when he was writing it. That's a guess on my part, but since he is describing a horse and Antony going into battle, it seems to be like a decent guess. It's not outside the realm of possibilities for sure. So for this week, the actual definition of armgaunt is ambiguous. We simply don't know what Shakespeare was trying to do, and there's a lot of theories about what he might have been doing. But hopefully this gives you a few definitions you can work with, and I'll link you to some more information below this video so you can further investigate the history and decide which one you think Shakespeare was talking about in that scene for yourself. That's it for this week. I'm Cassidy Cash. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new about the Bard. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.